little thing saying it's being recorded. All right, so want to welcome everyone. Today we have Dr. Mia here to give us her talk about Van Gogh, which I don't know if you realize this, I named it Waiting on Van Gogh, since so many of us, a bunch of us are planning to go to the Beyond Van Gogh exhibit next weekend. So we're still waiting for him. I am going to turn things over to you, and I assume you want to kind of leave Q&A for the end. That might be easier. You can always chat in, Paul. If you've got questions, you can throw them in the chat and we can go from there.
Sorry. I think wherever there was a delay. Go ahead, you finish and then I'll go.
Okay, just if you want, or would you prefer that he like raise his hand or something, and if anybody's got questions during?
No, go ahead. I'd prefer to start with the Q&A because I've got two little props here, and that'll get us started in what we understand and what he was really doing. Okay. Sometimes when we look at, so everybody that's on, go ahead and ask your questions as you have them. And I'd like to start with what your questions are, because most of the time we think we know about Van Gogh. Most people have seen him to some degree, or his work, or at least heard of his name, but they never seem to understand there were times in which there was a lot of accusations for mental illness, when really it was more spiritual issues going on. A lot of philosophers and theorists, depending on religious theorists or art teachers, he was believed to hear sound, but also see sound, and therefore paint the sound that he saw. And what people didn't seem to understand was, for him, that was unnerving, right? So it's like, if I put on these glasses like this, I'm like, ooh, that's so cute. I love these glasses, right? Little kitty cat ear tops. So if I'm walking down the street, that kind of dims my experience. So our brain gets to rest a little, kind of like today. I literally think I sunburned my eyes at some point today, right? So most of us, either by choice, go around experiencing the world less than the heightened sense, right? Now, as a heightened sense, we'd go like this. So now I'm not seeing the world as it is. I'm seeing the world adapted to how his energy experienced it, right? But because these glasses are red, I have glasses that are, orange and yellow, right? Each one actually takes out another color. But the problem was, he wasn't getting either of those. He wasn't getting a partial view, right? He wasn't getting a dimmed, less than sensation. He was getting overly stimulated with what he saw in the world. So imagine if you were seeing the world simulation as the energy that it is. And you're walking, I know I used to teach people in meditation, let's use somebody else's exercise first. There is an exercise to help us realize the world is energy, where you look at the road, and if you look at it a certain way, it seems to undulate as opposed to just be straight, so that you can start to see energy as you're walking and going. So I thought that was really cool. But people kind of get a little tired looking at a road. So I say, instead, when you look at a painting, because I love museums, everybody knows I love museums, travel the world, go see art and architecture. So I went in Paris to go see Van Gogh. And Paris has a museum night. Not everybody knows that, not every country does it, but it is a wonderful thing. There is a museum night wherein at night, all the museums that are normally closed at that time are open. And it's a way for people who live in a certain country to go and experience one another while they're experiencing art, as opposed to who's off of work in the midday, or tourists, or people who don't work or retired or whatever reason are the only people, and it's more sparse because it's also free. So now we don't have social class determining who gets to see his work. We don't have work schedules, right? Because the wealthy and the poor have work schedules. Maybe they a little bit more permissions or control over who has what. But when it comes down to it, he didn't get an enhanced view, like a corrective view. He got a driving himself crazy view of the world, and then spent some time painting it from like not a sanatorium, but like a crazy house where they know you just need to rest because they think you've been overwhelmed. So they don't think you're criminally insane. They don't think that you're hopelessly insane. And at that time, spirituality, like there were accepted spiritual reasons that they would consider you to be also insane, right? So now we don't always count that, oh, but they would think of things, energetics, energetic intrusion, energetic pollution as reasons. And so they would try to bring the person back to normal. What we see and celebrate about Van Gogh or Van Gogh, depending on who you're talking to, is that we celebrate his spiritual difference. And he couldn't control it and he didn't like it. So imagine if you could see and hear the energy of nature. So we'll just go with nature, because a lot of people see and hear, got to put the spectacles down. A lot of people see and hear the energy, but when you're standing in front of that painting, I want you now, like as a doctor who specializes in the brain, I specialize in the energetic, the biological, the conscious, the subconscious, the physiological, and the trauma brain. Until I develop that as a system, each one is a different field, a different set of degrees, a different amount of study. Like I tried to think, if I told you how many books to study, just not for me to then use my soul, my energy to go and see how it worked together. So just imagine you've got 8 juggling balls or 8 plates in the air, just trying to make those work together to say, how is this brain processing, right? Usually you got one person looking at the biology. Oh, something's wrong with the brain. They're looking at the physiology, the chemicals off, right? They're looking at the trauma. Oh, they're locked into a moment like PTSD. When they look at the spirituality of the brain, let's see if we can get the mind monkeys to calm down, right? So I tell people, when you're dealing with mind monkeys, give them juggling balls because they need something to do. Things that have you constantly running, right? Think of them as like a team of monkeys in a barrel. Remember when we were little kids? And give them something to juggle. And what will happen is the subconscious and the conscious will both act together, take over, and give them something to do. So now running you is not something they do. He didn't have that, right? He didn't have that. So what he had was, I'll calm down. They say that I'm crazy, and then I'll just like paint what I see, and hopefully someone helps me. And what it became is the treasures that we experience, right? I know that I've even like designed textiles, including his work. But when you're standing in a museum and you look at it, I want you to look at it differently. You're not looking at mental illness. You're not looking at a shaky hand. You're not looking at someone saying, wouldn't it be cool if I changed it to look like this? You're literally looking at a soul who painted what they saw. Okay, so when you're standing there, have your brain process the fact that this is not a modern artist. And I don't mean current time. I mean modern art in style. It is an impressionistic, historical figure showing you energetically what he's seeing while trying at the same time to make it stop. Okay? So the way that I look at it when I look at the different parts of the brain, because if you don't include the energetic brain, think Chinese medicine, right? Think those types of things. The flow of the energy for him was so overwhelming. And at that time, they didn't have anatomy the way that we have it, right? Not only do we have the experience of organs, we have the experience of the inner working of the bodies because of that time, because they were painting the body incorrectly. And they would paint it as authority. Like they would basically say, the body is doing this, but it was not reverse engineering. It was guessing based on what was happening on the outside. So he didn't even understand that the outer ear, although is where we hear, that by removing it wasn't going to take away that heightened torture of hearing color, of hearing energy. Got it? So it's kind of like, let me remove the torture. Didn't work, of course, because that's not, the hearing doesn't come from the fleshy part that, right? It comes from the inner workings. But in that time period, if you look at the art of scientific illustrations or other artists, what you'll find is the biology was wrong. That we have time periods all the way through the 1780s where human anatomy is painted in medical textbooks incorrectly of how the human body actually looks inside. They were going inside, they were trying to go inside, but they would still have to master that. Who really, really did it for us as scientists, as doctors, were people who weren't theorists, dabbling in medicine. It was really like Michelangelo and Leo. So I went to Amboise, France, and there's a town called Amboise, and Da Vinci, because in that time period, these artists traveled together. They would know each other depending on, as long as you were within a 20-year age range of one another, they kind of hung out like Shakespeare and the Bard, right? When you look at the art, if you see the art at the Sistine Chapel, because I was going to see, could I figure out how to put slides in this video for you? And I have about 3,000 pictures of Rome. And a large part of that is the Vatican Museum and the Sistine Chapel. When you look, the paintings are better because the understanding of what muscle makes the arm do this, right? As opposed to there's no muscle there. There was an understanding of tendons. There was an understanding of how the body moves. We can count on other artists for that. But with Van Gogh, we can see how the energy looks, right? But as we're benefiting from him seeing energy moving, we need to understand that he was tortured by it. He was tortured. He knew other people saw the world differently. He didn't know how because he didn't see it that way. You see, it's overwhelming. We usually have a subconscious mind that has like a gatekeeper, right? I always say, especially if you're dreaming, because most people don't even understand what a gatekeeper is anymore, because when was the last time you went through somewhere that had a gate, like with a booth and someone there or someone standing on the outside? So it's like, use the Wizard of Oz, when they show up and he's like looking like, oh, can you come in? Nope, you can't come in, right? The subconscious and the dream world has that kind of protector. It's not, that's why I don't like to use gatekeeper, because we have so many words that the subconscious attaches to our own filters The gatekeeper doesn't just keep things out to keep you out if you're not VIP on the list. The gatekeeper for dreams on the subconscious level has to do with keeping out the things we can't not handle. We can't handle knowing certain things at certain times. It's too much for us. So the subconscious really will just snatch it, like maybe like a trauma memory. The subconscious will snatch it and pull it away from you and bury it really, really deep. People think the conscious mind does that. No, the conscious mind is like seeing the outer ear, thinking that's your source of hearing. The outer ear is literally a funnel. Unfortunately, once they understood that by the 17, 18, and 1900s, if you had a hearing problem, there was like a big cornucopia and they'd have you put it in to assist you with your funnel, right? But we've come a long way because once you get assisted with your funnel, then we learn like, oh no, it's not the changing of this. It's not the changing of the shape of the funnel. It's the changing of the inner ear. So we need to send signals. That's why hearing aids have a battery, because there's electricity, because we're adjusting the energy. We don't have hearing aids to turn hearing down. Okay. So we're studying and we're looking at someone who really wished that that existed because that was his effort. So now we have to look at, on a conscious level, we had other people coming in and deciding he was crazy, or so he was, when I say crazy, I mean like he was insane, he was possessed, he was mentally polluted, he was overstressed. So a mental breakdown is the conscious mind has more than it can handle. The subconscious is suppressed for some reason and cannot remove or filter what the conscious mind can't handle. So it's considered there's a break. There's a break in that communication. So that's what a breakdown is. The thing set up to keep you from cutting off your own ear can't happen. Therefore, you start looking for physical ways in the world to handle what you're overwhelmed by spiritually, energetically, or intellectually. Now, we also know that when we're looking at the physiological, the physical brain, and the energetic brains together, those three, that's him. That's the key, right? So he's not just saying, I'm going to get right brain and left brain working together, right? It's kind of a tongue twister. But also, when you do that, if you say the phrase right brain, left brain working together and move your hands together at the same time, you actually make those two brains work together. Okay. Just like if you are having someone, so they could test, right? He didn't have brain damage, but some people, they thought he did. But if you can cross your legs, right? If you can cross your arms, you are showing, you're exhibiting in the physical world that your brains can work together, that they are at those moments working together. So when they said, okay, that's not it, it was almost like you keep remember when we were little and they had like the Chip and Dale kind of cartoons and Disney Fleischer, and it'd be like, he loves me not, he loves me not, right? With the brain, you had them coming up with these theories just flying off the handle. Oh, it could be this. And then they go, no, it's not. It could be this. No, it's not. And what we're left with is what he was left with. The painting of the sunflowers. He was left with, nobody can fix this. I'm going to continue to see it this way, but I need this to lessen so that he could handle it. He needed it to reduce. And so he pushed through the creativity of there's no fix. So I may as well cut down outer stimulation. So he couldn't cut down his gifts. He couldn't cut down the perspective and what his brain and soul were doing working together, which is why we say spiritual brain, right? There are very few people No more than one other doctor that I've heard of, and someone who literally, when I was studying every subject matter that I studied, I would go to libraries. Yeah, for any of you listening that are like hipsters or something, there's this cool place full of these things you can hold and carry. And ever since I was little, I love when I walk out of a library carrying a stack of books that I can barely see over the top, right? I'm such a bibliophile. In those days when I was studying and trying to figure out why we couldn't heal the brain, why things didn't seem like the physical body, and I was like, phantom limb, right? Where somebody loses a limb and the body doesn't understand it's gone, so they still feel the pain for something that's not there. It was like at conference, there's a conference we have for doctors who specialize in the brain. It's neuroscientists and other types of the brain, right? Surgeons, all kinds of people. I was like, no, it's energy. And they're like, what? And I said, okay, so I'll do a class on it. I'll do a lecture. But when it comes down to it, you'll be able to help all the vets when you realize it's not their imagination. It's not memory because it used to be there. It's literally energetics. The subconscious doesn't know the part's gone because the subconscious doesn't know the part's gone. The subconscious knows what it feels like when you bump that part. So it just sends you all the energetic sensations you would normally get. So what he had to do was say, I'm going to sit in this room where it is quiet. There's no horse-drawn carriages I have to avoid getting run over. There's no, right? So that he could say, I'm going to focus with my gift. My gift is something I can't change. I don't know why I have it. So I'm going to cut down the amount of outer world experiences I have. Notice how he doesn't paint tons of people, right? Because he needs to reduce the amount of stimulation, because his brain, just like brain power and IQ, most people don't know that IQ doesn't determine how smart you are. Like how little kids like, oh, that means you're extra smart or you know everything. It's like, no, it means the person's brain processes possibilities, opportunities, and conclusions that include the bank of everything. So when I studied this, it couldn't even just be the books I could carry out so happily. I used to sit in libraries and pull books until I had 8 or 9 piles of books taller than I sat. And then I would just sit and read them all. That is IQ level. So, you know, a lot of people, I'm a 99. For those of you who don't know, and what that means is my IQ level is so high that we're the 1% of the 2%. We'll just say it that way to save exclamation time. What that means is all those books, those 10 stacks, that's at least 100 books before I would leave that library on that and be studying a specific subject, trying to put together the system so we could use it for health and healing. I realized that I synthesize that, but each thing is a file that's separate, okay? And I can handle seeing it. And when I say it, it's not an illogical conclusion. Lower IQ, what they know is that they know it, and that's what they know, period. Right? So it's not a consideration of other possibilities. For him, there was not a peer group. There was not Meetup. There was not Facebook. There was not internet. There wasn't even to go to a meeting of other people like him because there wasn't someone else like him, right? If he and Da Vinci got together, like let's just say time and space, you fold it like Einstein said, or like now we're going, time's not real, right? Time is fluid. All the moments are happening at once, right? The multiverse, the metaverse. He didn't have that. He didn't have that vocabulary. So what he had to do was keep painting so the creative mind could keep the energetic flow going. So he could not stop painting or he would have lost his mind. So we're not looking at someone who lost his mind and painted his insanity. We're looking at someone who painted to prevent insanity. It's very different when you understand the brain and how it's working, and the creative force is our saving grace at all times. at all times, whether it's depression, right? Pessimism, actual spiritual intrusion, because they thought he must be possessed, right? Like, what on earth? We all know what a sunflower looks like. We know what a stack of hay looks like. Therefore, you're crazy for seeing that stack of hay in that way. But guess what? You know what I'm going to say? We're not looking at those people's art hundreds of years later. And when robots are on the world and we recognize the intelligence of AI, they will be looking at Van Gogh's work too. But all the people that called him crazy or possessed or, right, drunkard, right? There's so many people who love to get drunk in the world, but they're not painting what he painted, because that also was not the answer, right? So the answer is when we study those 8 parts of the brain, right? And I think there's a couple of my books, I know Power Mind does it, right? But I used to have to do a class to just say, the brain we see and the brain we can chemically trace are not the only brains. And then we got thinking we were advanced and go, oh, there's a subconscious, right? But now we're like, and there's also a superconscious, right? So what he was saying is, spiritually, physically, energetically, and biologically, this is our world. He wasn't saying this is my world. He wasn't saying I'm trapped in a world that doesn't exist, right? I'm not seeing furry unicorns. He's not painting pink elephants, right? He's not painting dancing hippos in tutus. We're not talking psychedelic 1970s. We're literally talking, he's saying to us, I'm not trapped in a world and I want you to experience it with me, like some velvet psychedelic, machine. I don't know if you've ever stuck your face in, they used to call it a psychedelic machine, acid machine. And what they were is this kind of like a projector from the 1930s where you would watch the slides flip. For anyone who doesn't understand that, they take slides and make animation by flipping it. And then you'd stick your face and you'd watch the flipping, and between the light, you saw movement, you saw motion. We're so used to actually having motion pictures, we forgot what motion pictures means, which is pictures that are moving so that we can see them rise up. Now, if we go back to IQ, I was a little tiny kid when I decided I wanted to see pictures move. I did not know about motion pictures. I didn't know that's why we were calling it motion pictures, but somehow my brain would map out if I would take a drawing and draw it just a little different, right? I was a kid, so I didn't know this was a thing. So I was doing it so I could see pictures move. So I would draw little tiny books with birds that flew off the page and flip them, right? We don't have that kind of stuff anymore. But when you do this and you stick your face in that projector and it's flipping, that's what he was doing, was saying, if we look at the energetics, we don't need to make it 3D. I'm going to show you that everything's vibrating. I'm going to show you this world is energy. Everything is vibrating. Therefore, he did not have the ability to just see a stagnant world. So usually we see energy, right? It's moving so fast, we don't see the molecules moving. Right? And then if you look at the spirituality of it, Einstein, my work, right? What we're seeing is consciousness. If you can look in a scope and you can see molecules affected by consciousness, meaning how you're thinking a result will show up will affect the energetic conscious space around the molecule, and it will show up that way. And I usually do it with, the water trick. So you take some water, you get a glass of water. I prefer to start with a bottle of water because usually, I'm teaching like a huge conference or retreat, 10,000 people, 34,000 people. And so it's not like we can run to the faucet and get 34 cups of water, right? 34,000, excuse me. But if we take that water and now you don't drink the bottle, you take a sip of that water and see that's your base. This is what this water tastes like to me. The lower IQ, they think this is what this water tastes like, period. No other data can be entered. Higher IQ, this is what this water tastes like to me, but it probably tastes different to my neighbor. It probably tastes different, which case, where that case sat, right? When it was bottled, we start to think all those factors. That's what he was doing. So if you do that as an exercise, and once you have the base, then you can think really good and positive and pure and wonderful thoughts, right? And that water tastes better. The same bottle. That's why I use the bottle. I don't want you to think some trick happened at the faucet. I want you to see how thoughts are affecting the energy, and the energy is adjusting to those thoughts. So if you're not in a lab looking through a scope and seeing that your thought makes that biology change, then you can do it with the water, and it works even better if between the test, the base, and the happy thoughts, where it's like, why did this water taste better? Put in the middle some negatives, right? So you talk over that bottle of water and you just say the most mean stuff, or yell and insults. You taste that water, it's horrible. Then take that same bottle of water, say some positive stuff, that same bottle of water goes back to tasting good and refreshing. So how do you think it was affecting the energetics, right? So the energetics affect the physiology. So now you start to realize that as above, so below, energy being affected by thought. He was seeing energy. And at first he thought something was wrong with him for a very long time. It wasn't an inkling. It wasn't a passing thought. For years, decades, he thought something was wrong with him because of the way that he saw the world, because of he wasn't seeing it the way people were telling him the world exists, until finally he realized, I can't change me. So maybe I can show you what I think this place looks like. Got it? That took him a long time to get to that position. One, that's why I've been teaching about the brain. That's why I share the 8 brain system, not because I wanted people who didn't study it, who didn't create it, to take my work and then start a class and act like it was their idea. Because unless it's your idea and you study it through, right? You go to all these labs, you sit on think tanks, you do all this stuff, then you don't understand how the brain works together. So there are people who still think he was just, that's his style. No, that's his gift. The way he painted was his gift of seeing the world as oscillating energy, which it is. Most of us, our gatekeeper, our controller, our protector, right, is keeping us from realizing that everything around us is moving, right? We see it as each of us, each soul, each brain, each IQ level is delivering, right? So we're not all seeing the same world. Not everyone is seeing me the same through their camera. We're all seeing a different hair color, right? Now, I'm not talking about the grays for any hipster who'd like to interject a joke. I'm talking about the red that you can see at the bottom as opposed to what appears to be a different color at the top because of the moisture on my hair, making it appear darker. I'm literally saying, if we go to the dress, some of us are seeing cherry and some of us are seeing tomato and some of us are seeing brick and some of us are seeing it moving, right? So imagine being him. The polka dots would be like 3D and going in motion. Oh, you know how I am. You know I'm always going to trick into learning, right? So did you think I wore this dress by accident? So imagine somebody else seeing the dots like they're coming out. They're moving. Imagine if you had to see the world like that every day, all day long. You would cut off your ear tip. Okay, so it wasn't just, oh, he had a bad romance, you know, that was a theory. He had a bad romance and he was in such heartbreak, right? He wanted to just show, look how much you broke my heart. I'm gonna mutilate myself. He was tired of this place anyway, because he was tired of seeing a place that everybody told him didn't exist, right? Now we have things that say thoughts are things, your thoughts create the world, everybody's energy. Then he had, I like to call meat and potatoes, right? Because where I grew up it was a very like meat and potatoes, and then elegant, you know, very elegant 1940s. There was a Navy base, there was a port, right? There were people who had participated and helped in the world wars. And so there was this elegance as people walked down the street where I grew up, where there were hats and gloves and hankies and right, gentlemen with suits, and ladies had little hats. And you know, I'm retro. So you're going to see the 40s, 50s, or 1800s or 1760s when you look at my clothes anyway. We don't have that kind of concept anymore, where when we say meat and potatoes, it means basic, everybody agrees on it, good, solid stuff you can count on, okay? So we're not talking about California cuisine, where we literally have a restaurant that it's $85 for a plate that's just barely bigger than a bread plate, but it's cut in a nice, cute shape. So we're not supposed to mind that it's $85. That plate has a sprig. I know because I paid, I went there, I saw it. Okay. One sprig of asparagus, one dollop of what appears to be a mustard in color, but it's a tangy, sweet dressing, right? And then 2 Brussels sprouts, but not really. It's 1 Brussels sprout cut in half, folded open to look nice. That's your plate for $85, okay? For your experience. I'm not talking about cuisine where that has to make sense to you. Oh, each bite is so delicious. And so, right? So that makes the price. No, meat and potatoes is the price of meat per pound, well cooked with potatoes on a plate. So good, solid, making some sense, understanding. They kept trying to make him have good, solid sense and pull back his spiritual gifts and see the world in the small view that they have, right? So if we take out that sunflower, and instead of saying, oh, the water tastes differently, now let's make that sunflower, okay? We'll do a little visualization, right? Bring all the 8 brains together. Any trauma that is attached to us, wherein we now think we know what that sunflower is, if that's a trigger for you, flowers or the smell, right? We're gonna destroy and uncreate that. So now the trauma brain is not gonna do what it always does, which is show up as first filter. We just destroyed that. So that doesn't even get to be a part of our world or participate anymore, right? So now let's look at the sunflower again and realize we're all seeing a different sunflower. It's not a matter of bouncing that sunflower up and down. It's a matter of saying the petals look different to each of us. The color looks different to each of us. And then be Van Gogh and go paint it. Sit there and watch, because what he was doing was he wasn't saying, I'm going to make them see what I see. He was saying, I am tortured by what I see because I can't see what they tell me I'm supposed to see. And everybody said something's wrong with me. So I'm just going to be quiet and stare out of a window. And they realized that in the time where they thought, keep him quiet, put him right. So that's what it used to be. A sanatorium was put you somewhere quiet so you can pull yourself back together, because you must be split in pieces because you don't see the world like the rest of us see it. They knew he needed a window. He knew he needed to stop trying to see the world they saw and show us what he saw and enjoy that he saw it because he couldn't stop seeing it. And luckily for us, now that's fabric and prints and paintings. And I use it for brain games, right? But when we look at that way, we can also then see the 8 parts of the brain. We can see the trauma. Of course he was insane because something was driving him insane. Plus people were driving him insane, trying to tell his brain what it was processing is so incorrect that they were willing to say, sit down, take this super long time out, and you don't get to come out of timeout until you see what we see. Okay? So when we take out judgment, now everybody's sunflower, and please don't steal my idea. But what if we had a painting where everybody drew their sunflower that they see and then put it and made one painting of all those different sunflowers? That's the world. That's literally the world, the physical world. We all see a different existence. We all think the world is the place we see. And we're side by side with someone else seeing a completely different world. So what I enjoy about things like Paris Museum Night, or when I travel, or even when I'm home, walking through a museum is one of my favorite places in the world. I like it better than most people like walking in nature or a forest or anything like that. I enjoy walking through a museum so I can see all those worlds that each artist made. I've gotten over years ago seeing the mastery, because I started as a classically trained fine artist. I was a little kid winning awards by age 8. Therefore, I studied the masters, and I studied the masters again. And I believe you should study the masters every year. But as you walk, it's kind of like Lear. You will learn something different every time you see the same artist, the master artist, every time you see the same painting. Because as soul, you're different. As consciousness, you're different. But thanks to Van Gogh, we know so is the world. You didn't just change. The energetics of the world changes in every moment, in every day as we interact with it. So that's why Lear is always different. You can stand in front of the same painting. And if you do that for yourself, it helps you change, and it helps you realize the world changes. So I want to know if anybody has any questions before I go into color palette, which is what I was going to talk about next, just briefly. If we're not out of time, I don't have a timekeeper. Normally when I'm on stage, like TV, watch the red dot. With this, there's no red dot. So I try to give myself a focus. And there's nobody flashing up and giving me a card warning of time. So we'll
no timekeeper. Here's my question after hearing what you're saying about Van Gogh, because honestly, I really don't know a lot about him. But it sounds like he might have actually had something that now we can, I think it's called synesthesia, where they see like sounds as colors or numbers as colors, and or even beyond, like now how we understand autism spectrums and things like that, where we have a world understanding the brain better. If he would have lived now, he probably wouldn't have had the artistic legacy that he now, because we would understand what's going on in his brain, and he wouldn't have to throw that art out to get us to see his brain.
Okay, so then I would say, so let's go all the way through to the cherry on top and pretend like I have like the perfect Coca-Cola, perfect milkshake, right? Could we have diagnosed that and have that term if he hadn't existed prior? If he didn't exist and have those paintings, and for us to understand. So yes, now we have named what he had, but would we understand that that was a thing to have had he not existed and painted, right? So yes, that's what he had. Yes, but if I just say, oh, he could see sound, people are like, oh, yes, exactly. But now because that existed, we can understand seeing sound as a possibility. Now that we have technology where we can watch. One thing I like, because I love to sing, but only like show tunes and big band, right? And Ella and Sarah and stuff like that, right? And so sometimes I sing to myself, by myself. Like I could sing professionally, but I don't. It's not why I like to sing. So I will tape myself. I will get the phone to see what's going on, right? Somebody was saying they need to step away for a second, but they'll, and so now our phone shows us what sound is looking like. Or sometimes I'm recording a meeting. Like, I'm in a meeting, I need to record it so I can listen to it on a different level. I can listen as a viewer, not a doctor. I can listen as an artist, right? And so between me recording that little snippet to hear how my voice has changed, right? I can see sound, because the computer is taught to show me sound moving. When I'm recording a meeting and I have one laptop talking to another laptop and also talking to my cell phone, I can see that their mics are working because it knows to show sound waves. But what we used to do long ago, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, not literally, but maybe 50 years ago, 35 years ago, is we'd go into what was called sound chambers, right? And they got really popular in the 1930s, and they pretty much were like cement tunnels, but like for the size of 1 to 10 people. And the top was open, and you'd make a sound while you stood at the bottom, and then the sound would go to the top, but we were barely understanding echo at that time. Now we can understand the energetics of sound can be seen. Got it? That's very different than we can hear it back because an echo travels through a sound chamber. Or now I can hear it when I need technology to talk to each other, and one is doing the recording, one is doing the talking, one is doing the monitoring. And I know that they're talking because the mics are moving, but the waves that the algorithm is set up to show is what I'm able to see. What he was able to see is sound in existence, sound as energy, sound as movement, right? So when I teach a class or I do a talk or I'm reprogramming a brain, sound is a therapy because sound has a vibration. The vibration changes the molecule. The molecule changing changes the biological structure, which then can control, I like to call it snatch back. So if you have a physiological problem, if your brain chemistry is off, sound, certain sounds can literally snatch the problem and snatch it out of you, change your frequency, and fix the biology. Okay, that's a science, that's types of therapy. But what is the treatment for seeing sound in the physical world? You see the energy moving, you see the trees blowing, right? So you don't see the limbs of the trees blowing, you hear the sound of trees blowing in the wind. Okay, you can accept that because you think ears hear. Now, what happens when you see the sound of the limbs blowing? Got it? So that's exactly, right? That's exactly, but we now have the name, right? So we're back to the chicken and the egg. Do we have it because we know him? Or did he now have what we know and we can diagnose it better? Or because of him? Which one? How did it happen? And I just energetically, I keep seeing the infinity, right? When I was little, until I was about 10, I started studying anatomy in second grade, but I started studying mythology earlier than that. My mother loved mythology and I love mythology. And those of you who don't know me, yes, I run around Rome and talk to statues and I love you, I love you, I love you, and talk to each statue, right? Because I love mythology to this day. And even in my comic books, there's every hero is because we had mythology, right? So when we're thinking like that, I like to talk to statues and I don't think there's something wrong with that. But I know to hold my own as a doctor, because of Van Gogh's paintings, right? As a child, I knew he painted what he saw because I was an artist. But I knew that a lot of us choose and then filter what we should be seeing and then paint what we think we should be seeing. But once I started teaching and realized, let's all look at this tree and paint this tree, and I got back 35 different paintings, I was like, something's going on, right? And then when I started being a master teacher and I had to assess and train other people how to be teachers, then I'd say, how dare you do this to this baby genius, right? Even being a gifted children's coordinator for Mensa, I'd say, everybody else painted what you expected them to see. So they all painted some version of a sky that was light blue, right? They all painted clouds like this, right? Unless you have that little scientist that studied the different shapes of the names of clouds, you get pretty much that little, the agreed upon, sheep level. Let's do this. We'll use South Park. The sheeple, right? That's not all clouds are shaped like that, but we do through filters, even the societal filter, because society's thoughts affect the physiological, energetic body. And we kind of feel that. We feel all that negativity saying, hey, look, we're all seeing this. You better paint what we see. Right? And then the genius baby, of course, painted the sky. It was dark blue and purple with some red in it. And the teacher had given them a low score. And I said, this child painted the sky. The assignment was the sky. And the teacher's reply was, no, the sky's blue. And I said, no, this is a processing issue. And then she smiled as if I was talking about the child. But if you know me, you know I was talking about the teacher's processing issue. Because
there's red at night, sailor's delight. So the sky is obviously red at some point in time. And if you've ever experienced a tornado, it's green.
You see, so the sky is every color that exists. As a matter of fact, that's how we get color, right? That's how we get every color we have. The fact of the sky and the sky changing and being a live action prism at all times. So scientifically, the sky is every color, and the colors filter out, which is why we get a horizon, which is why we get sunsets, which is why we get sunrises. So the issue was the teacher was not scientific. The teacher was not processing beyond her societal filters. So we'll learn from Van Gogh that when you see sound, and everybody else is not able to see sound, then they think you must be the crazy one. But if you go as a philosopher, I love being a philosopher because we take logic and then we filter it through. Because for those of you who don't know, philosophy is psychology, sociology, history, and about 9 other things that we had to pull out because philosophy was too much for people to be able to handle as one science. So we have 8 other sciences that all came out of philosophy, but they're a part of the pizza, right? So philosophy is the pie and those sciences are a slice because people couldn't handle the whole pie. But let's say you have a brain that processes the whole pie. Then you study philosophy and master it. So the teacher wanted me to agree with her so much. Her brain told her, I was talking about the kid had a processing issue. But as a member of Mensa and a gifted children's coordinator, part of our job is to protect the baby geniuses, right? Make sure they're getting curriculum they need and also make sure they're not being bullied for being more than a sheep, being more than sheeple. So I was talking about her processing issue and I had to let her know through the things, right? No, this is an A like every other little scribbled sky blue sky, right? Hint, hint. Why is that color called sky blue? Because we've agreed on that blue neutralized with white. So go back to Van Gogh. That's why I was going to talk about color palette. Color palette shows us energy. So sky blue, cherry red, that's a societal agreement. The bulk of humans will see and agree. That's what that means. cherry red. There's no such thing. So I had a teacher who was such a blessing to me, because as a painter, I could make every color, right? Because I can see color. When I say I can see color, I'm not Van Gogh. Thank goodness, I'm so lucky, right? Because that seeing energy on humans and spiritually is a gift enough. And I appreciate having that gift, right? But I master my gifts so I'm not overwhelmed by my spiritual gifts. But when I look at a color, I have been an artist so long, I can say that is pink, neutralized with white, with probably 1 to 2 dots of blue. And then I will paint that color. That's, by the way, that's cherry red, right? So cherry red, sky blue is blue, neutralized with white. And the only way to get a true sky blue is to not add gray. Otherwise you get slate blue. You see, so people don't see colors in that way. Probably maybe 2% of the population does, where when you look at a color, you know the other colors in it to make up that color. The rest of us, in order for our brain to process and handle the subconscious, and what the subconscious is doing with the conscious mind, is the subconscious runs the show and kicks back, right? And lets the conscious mind get the spotlight and pretend to be the ringmaster. But the subconscious runs the show. The conscious mind is the performer. The subconscious mind orders everything we do. So we say, oh, that's mustard yellow. That's forest green. We take things that we see in the physical world and agree is a certain color. Like if we say a tree is green, you know what? Some trees are green, most trees are green, but almost no tree is the same green as the tree next to them. Okay, so there used to be a question to test intellect that said, is this plant healthy? And what we found was culturally and sociologically, so social class, money, exposure to education, the children were getting that question wrong because the plant looked like it was draping. So you were supposed to say the plant that was draping over the pot was the unhealthy plant, and the healthy plant was the one straight up in the pot. And that way you could test the intellect of that child. Well, by social class, what if you study botany as an itty bitty like me? Then you know that some plants are supposed to like grow on a trellis. And if you put them in a pot, they grow over the sides because they're trying to find something to climb on. Other times, what if you have a weeping willow? It hangs. It's perfectly healthy, but it's doing the same thing as what we're telling the unhealthy plant. Well, that was doing the same with color. So in the palette, let's use his palette. I'm very Irish when it comes to certain things. Thank my ancestors, right? I love having the palette he used around me because it makes me feel like my heritage is honored, but also appreciated, right? So gold, like a golden yellow, a goldenrod yellow, which is not every one's cup of tea, right? Then a rust color and a vibrant green that's muted with gray. Okay, that's his color palette.
It's a description of the paintings.
Yes, you see, but that's also a box that I can look across the room and see on my bed, because certain color palettes make us feel a certain way. Got it? And because they energetically do something when they come together as a series of colors, we can then adjust the body for wellness, for healing, so we have sound as a theory, we have sound as a therapy, we have color.
What's her name?
I'm wondering, it's Mia.
Yes?
Mia.
Mia?
Is someone asking me a question? I've
No.
heard my name a couple times, like 3 or 4 times.
Jim and Barbara have joined the call, and they're talking. Can you guys mute yourself? Unless you have a question for Dr. Mia?
Is that all?
Yes.
Welcome. So we were just talking in this moment, as you were joining, about color theory and color as a therapy. We previously spoke about sound, the palate, the mind, the subconscious mind, the 8 parts of the mind, some brains, some talks, some books. So now you're caught up just in an overview. Please watch again. And if you've been here the whole time, please watch again, because the brain will process more information. The brain will hear a whole different part that you at that moment might need or want energetically or physically, or, even spiritually. So when we look at the color palette chosen, the color palette adds comfort to us on levels that other color palettes would not have done. So think of most pop art, think of comic books. That's a lot of black and white, that's a lot of red and blue, right? Historically, and then we added yellow later to that palette. But that palette doesn't do the same comfort level. This one's almost like clam chowder soup or Caesar salad, right? His palette makes us feel good earth, right? That used to be one of my favorite teas. It's where when we feel certain levels of goodness on the earth, we know the sky is healthy. It's not like gray and stormy and cloudy. Like one time for my clients, I literally went out in the rain and made a video, because you guys know I've started to do social media. But also know that, of course, all the names of my social media is reprogramming. So my username is doing something reprogramming. Like, did you buy a mannequin? That kind of thing. Oops, I stepped in poop. Like that kind of stuff. So his color palette gives us the comfort of, it's a sunny day and it's spring or summer, right? Like, there's another artist and I love him, and he's like a good person to talk to and hang out with. And when he's in the country, that's what we do. He's a very famous artist, Luke. And so when he walks, the audience follows him. And I say, oh, they're like, like little duckies. Even though they could walk along the wall, if he walks through the center of the room, they walk through the center of the room. If he curves, they follow the curve, instead of just, because energetically they're being pulled. When we see Van Gogh's work, we are pulled into our highest level of comfort, right? It's the season that's most comfortable to live in, right? It's not so burning hot. It's not freezing cold. It's not a snowy winter, right? It's a palette that uplifts us. So it's a feel-good palette, but it's a feel-good palette because it's the optimal day on earth. And then like use that phrase for yourself, kind of not just an affirmation, but an assurance. What is an optimal day on earth? We all have a different view of that, but it usually also includes the sun. I mean, unless you're like super dark energetically, the sun is something that gives you comfort. And when you're looking at his palette, it's not always the perfect day, but it's a great day in nature, right? And when we look at the palettes and how the palettes affect us energetically, affect our biology, affect our physiology, affect our spiritual mind, calm our subconscious, help even things come up to the surface so they can leave us, right? So we'll do like a POC and pod, say, let's destroy it and create the things that aren't allowing us to have a happy conscious mind, and things hidden in our subconscious that come up from this talk or anything we've said. We can let it go now. That's the whole concept of the oop, I stepped in poop. And I keep talking about the poop. You don't want to just leave it on your shoes. Some stuff you let go of it. You don't let go of it and let it keep messing with you. You let go of it so it can no longer mess with you. So I want to know if you guys have any questions or you want the last thing I was going to talk about, which is tips when you go to museums, so that you can not just only experience the art, but give your soul a gift and experience health and healing, and also little, maybe 1 or 2 exercises you can do while you're there, especially with this specific artist.
I really like the ways to experience it. Now, I don't know, have you been to any of the Beyond Van Gogh exhibits that because this is going on throughout the country. It's an immersive, you're not looking at the art, you're like in the art.
And so I haven't been, but this is how the universe works. I was gonna go when they had Michelangelo, I think it was, because one of my favorite pieces of art was on a billboard. Then I saw it on a advertisement on like a bus thing. I was like, what are they doing? Then I realized, and I said, oh, it's like you get to be inside the painting. I love it. So I said that, and because I attached emotion to a desire, the universe sent it right away. You know how the universe, like, you actualize it, right? It's not our job to manifest. The universe's job to manifest. It's our job to actualize and pull it in. So I attached thought, I attached emotion, and I basically sent in an order for overnight delivery. And I met the woman who is the promoter for that show, for all the shows. I went where I was told. I was driving home and somebody said, don't you have to go make enlargements of one of your pieces? And so I was like, okay. And as I walk into the copy place, there's a woman in front of me and she's kicking along this super heavy box. And you know how the universe is. So I was there at the right time. She was there at the right time. We got little nudges. Something told her not to carry the box. She had a little bit of, she was overwhelmed, right? So she's kicking the box and the sound is getting everyone's attention. I look down and read the label, and the outgoing label is for the show. And so I asked her, like, oh, are you going to the show? Why are you mailing us? And she's like, oh, well, I do the promotion for all of them. And right. So I got to talk to her for like 30, 40 minutes about the experience and what it is, so that I could understand how they use the technology and the physical world to set up these experiences. And got really excited. But then I tried to go and they were sold out, and I didn't want to like use her card to call her and ask her for that. So I said, I'll wait for the next one. But because of that, I said, so then people not only can have experiences there, right? But also things to take home and do as well. So when you're walking through, it has to do with, don't engage the scientific mind too much. When you're walking through, be a kid in a Van Gogh, right? So don't age yourself like rapid movement until you're old. Only take yourself from childhood to present moment, right? So go on that age spectrum as you're walking through. If trauma happened at like 5 or 6 years old, then don't be 5 or 6 years old. Be 8, right? Find a happy moment between the ages of 5 and 8, and that is who you are when you walk through there. Or use Alice in Wonderland. You know, I love using Alice in Wonderland as points for health and healing. So you're Alice, you're walking through Wonderland. What is there for you to experience? Okay, so you know, it's always spiritually healthy to come from the question. What is here that I'm not appreciating, that if I appreciated it, I would have my ultimate joy and get a healing from my past, present, or future? Okay, think about that phrase that I just put into the 4 of the 8 parts of the brain. The other 4 jump on board. Now your whole brain is engaged. So you're not walking through like, did they do this right? Or what's here? You don't have a pen and paper out. And so the logical mind is taking over, right? What is here for me to experience that is magical and wonderful? See? So you walk through as Alice, you walk through as a child, and you're looking, and then grow up. As a teenager, what is here that I would have loved to see, that I forgot I loved in this world? Right? And then I'll, be a doctor right quick and say, and everything that doesn't allow for that, I destroy and uncreate it. Got it? So now you got your healing. So now you turn, and where you just came from physically in that exhibition, you will have a healing and you'll see something else great in there. So stay in a box, right? So kind of walk and then walk back to where you walked before and see it again. But have these thoughts going. What do I have questions about here that I haven't questioned in life? Then walk. I wonder what he saw. What would I ask him if I could ask him about this? What does this exhibition answer for me as soul? What is my gift that I'm not registering or seeing? I had to start using a phrase recently, which is, my house is so full that if I buy something, I have to get rid of something else because it's so full, right? It's so full because I'm so frilly. So I'm not saying, oh, no, Rococo Baroque is my favorite period of decorating. There's bows and there's ribbons and there's butterflies and there's on antique dressers, there's little adornments that I've put on each knob, or right? But I'm a scientist. So I wanted to feel like I was in my sewing room in the 1800s. And in my sewing room, I would include some botany and some anatomy and some, right? So when you're walking through there, who are you? And are you who you would be? Don't be the caterpillar. If you're in Alice in Wonderland, don't be the caterpillar. The caterpillar didn't know who he was. He didn't know he's going to change to a butterfly, but he knew enough sitting doing his drugs to question Alice's identity. So when you walk through there, don't question your identity, change your identity. Say, I would ask Van Gogh this. And then the next time you turn, the next thing you turn to look at, what would he say? What would his answer be? So then you imagine you're a kid or you're in your 20s and he's there. And what's the answer? Right? Time moves, it folds, it's fluid, all times are happening at once. How do you know that if you walk through that experience, you won't turn and see his image and hear an answer or feel an answer? So then you learn to interact with the physical world that way. Because you do realize that that's the way I walk through the physical world that we experience as real. In the question and looking for the joy and knowing that time is fluid. And I have a question. I want to ask Einstein something. That's why I went to Amboise. When I went to Amboise, France, the reason I went is because I love Da Vinci and he was a house guest there and his mechanical drawings for some of his inventions are there. And so I wanted to be surrounded in the house and walk the gardens and ask Da Vinci the questions I would have. When I have questions for Van Gogh, there's two places I go. I go to the museum and nature, which is to me like, right? Or I go to Paris near Montmartre. You see? To say he walked these streets and some of these cobblestones were here and he stepped on them and now I'm stepping on them. So I want to see his friends. When he's walking down the street, if he and his friends were in front of me, what would they be talking about? What would they be doing? So when you're in that exhibition, do this spiritual gift for yourself, do this healing gift for yourself, have a walking conscious meditation and spiritual, energetic, and artistic treats for yourself. You get to be in a painting. We live in a world where it's not like the theater of the 1800s where there'd be a set design of a gold filigreed frame, right? Usually, Rococo Baroque style, because it's the best. And then there'd be some feet between the frame and the back curtain. So then you could put a fake ocean. Then there'd be actors holding those pieces of fake ocean to make them move. And then you'd stand there and then there'd be some moving clouds and sky and background and fish. But people, that's as far as we could go in the 1800s of us being in a painting. But now, thanks to AI, science and art working together, our souls get to experience being inside a painting. And because the subconscious runs the show, the body's not going to be able to tell you you're not there. The body's going to be there. That painting's going to be real, and you're going to experience that world. So do like lucid dreaming and control your experiences. Don't turn around. Most of us haven't had trauma moments in the hay, right? So you're probably not going to get any haunted house feelings. But you could have feelings of confusion if you keep trying to say, oh, I don't know much about this, or I can't master that. That's not why you're there. Remember, you're between 5 and 8, and you have those questions, and you watch this replay, and you address those questions. And those questions are for your health and healing, and to open your soul and to pull that art in, right? You know how I say, don't feed on other people. People are recycled trash, right? People are what they have already experienced. So don't feed on their energy. The sun, pull that in. When you're in that painting, pull in who was talking, what were they doing? How did he choose this as a color palette? We know culturally, we know, right? A lot of people with red hair, that's our color palette. It's like, we like that color palette. But also as humans, remember what I taught you. That's the comfort. That's the good earth. That's a great day on the planet. That's the perfect part of the season. And you get to go be inside of it. You get to be inside of history. You get to be inside of art. You get to be inside of his brain. And now with this talk, you get to be inside of your brain. And you get to kind of dust buster little places and blast an atomic bomb, other places. You get to have it change. You get to have all that, clear it out and fill it up. Remember, clean, heal, and fill up. And that's what you're going to do now when you go. Are there any other questions or requests or guided meditation or a quick something?
Jim and Barbara, you don't have anything? Sounds like you've hit the questions we have right now, or we're way overwhelmed and don't know what to ask. There's so much information there.
Okay,
Hey.
Barbara and I are good. Okay, we're good.
Yeah, it comes from, it's like the blessings of the 99s, because we're like, right? Symphony. Let's get this and this and this and this, and this is how it, right? You don't have to just absorb it. Just allow it, drop down the guards and just allow it to just pour in. Just allow it to fill up. Just allow it to, right? Just, wow, that's amazing. You guys are such a gift to me. I am so glad you asked me to do this talk. I'm so glad we did it. It's wonderful. I'm anticipating all your experiences and your health and healing, not just from the talk, but from experiencing the exhibition. And then when it's time to leave, go through and say, what do I need to take with me from this experience? And what do I need to leave here or let go of when I walk through the door? See? I used to tell my clients a lot, oh, you get to be new, right? Because my clients would come with extreme trauma, especially at that time. We didn't just have the joy coaching. We didn't have the kawaii. Like, we started the new campaign a couple months ago, kawaii till we die, right? Because other people had negative stuff till they die. And we're like, no, we're kawaii till we die. And people were like, what's kawaii? I was like, well, it's much more than a toast with a happy face. It is the amount of joy that pushes through. Now, when you go through there, the scientific mind is not going to be saying, who are you? Who are you to be here? You don't know all this stuff. It can't do that. Because of this talk, all you can do is just be Alice. Put your arms behind your back and look up in wonder. Experience. You see? Experience, heal, grow, have joy. And remember that our perceptions of what is happening in any situation is our own filters, our own stereotypes we have in our head, not what's really taking place. And so when you go through, you'll also just, you'll experience what's really taking place as your soul needs it. So you don't have to have homework. You don't have to have agenda. Your homework is you got to be new. So now you're new. And whatever your soul tells you when you leave, when you say, what do I need to take with me from this? And after you get home, guess what? Because we've talked about the 8 parts of the brain, you're going to be able to put yourself back in that moment. So it'll be like, you know, the talk I have, or the book I think it's in the 12 questions. I'm not sure. It's probably in three of my 27 books, I think. It's basically this: you need your cotton candy, you need your spinach. The spinach is what's your Popeye kind of thing of, I can't take it anymore, it's too much. And then you have your spinach and all of a sudden you can take it. And then your cotton candy is from one of my real things. I love cotton candy so much. I always have since I was a kid. And if someone did something to me and they really, really hurt me, or they really misjudged me, and they'd say, what can I do to make it better? And I say, cotton candy. I need some cotton candy, because when I taste it, when it hits my tongue, it's going to give so much joy. It'll wash away all that poop, right? It'll just wash it away because I taste it. You're going to have this as your cotton candy. From now on, for the rest of your life, after you go here and you do this stuff that we talked about while you're there, anytime something's going on and you need pure joy, you'll put yourself back in that exhibit at those moments and have those memories, right? And there'll be no uncomfortable moments attached, because we've already deleted them. We've already, in the future, we've already gone and said, you don't get to exist. Uncomfortable moments, unsure moments, being puzzled or confused right there, those moments don't get to exist. We destroyed and uncreated them. So they can't be there. It's just pure joy. So you'll have cotton candy and some stuff that'll come to your mind when you ask those soul questions that I've given you. You might even get some spinach out of that too, especially since most of the palate would include spinach. So the brain's going to attach that. The brain's going to take that as a subconscious filter. This gives me strength. Always remember, he had his strength, right? It took a lot. He went through a lot as a man, as a person, as an artist, as soul. What if you had to see sound? Now you don't even feel scared to do it. If you were that person or you're that kid, you're like, hey, I'm in good company. And that's a real thing. So I'm not crazy. And guess what? It's okay to be crazy. Okay, that's the Mad Hatter in Alice. Why do you think it's written? Because everybody has their thing where somebody else would say we're crazy because we're not like them. That's what crazy means, right? When society says crazy, they mean I don't understand it, I haven't experienced it, or I don't see it that way. That's what they're saying. And it used to be, if you're someone who is there to change the world, make it a better place, think outside the box, and to introduce new things to the world so the world can improve. When you say it, they're going to think you're insane because it hasn't happened yet, because it's your soul's job to bring it into the world. So you can't choose not to say it, not to do it, not to experience it, not to bring it forth, because that was your purpose. So ignore the sheep. They don't get a vote. Turn it down, right? Turn down their volume, turn up the health and healing and the art that you're going to experience. Now it'll be way more than just a walk through to see what happened. It's going to be so just miracle magical, just wonderful and beautiful and happy and good. And then think of his life. He can feel that, right? That every joyful moment you have validates every struggle he had, and say, thank you for going through that so I can experience this. I'm so grateful and thankful that you existed. And being in a place of gratitude will give you another healing. You know, I tell you, if you can't think of something to be grateful about, I've had hard times, I've had great times, I've had unbelievable miracle times, and I've had unbelievable nightmarish times. But when you go, I'm so grateful and thankful. And some moments you'd be like, I'm so grateful and thankful I have eyelashes. I'm so grateful, right? You can't think of anything and you're on the screen. I can't think of anything. Then I'm so grateful and thankful I have cheekbones, right? But when you're walking through this, I'm so grateful and thankful I get to see this, right? I'm so grateful and thankful that I can drink this in and experience this because we couldn't have done this at another period in time because we didn't know we could do it. Of course we could do it because everything that exists now existed in the 1300s. We just didn't know how to put it together and use it. Right? I think was I 10 or 11 when I figured out, I was like, we're ants in the ant farm. And we just take what's already here and we shove it into a tunnel, and then we get a set of consciousness and a new realization and new way to work something. And next thing you know, we go from eating horses to riding them. Then we go from riding them to having our cars honor them and be horse powered, although no longer powered by horses. So we get to change our consciousness and grow. So that's what's going to happen while you're there. You're just going to be happy. You're just going to be, 5 to 8 years old, and then make sure you pull yourself through your other ages up through your 20s, right? If you're over 50, then pull yourself up through to the moment that you're in, right? You can skip the 30s. The 30s is when we start to realize we didn't know everything. So it's a time of going, I really thought I knew everything when I was 20. But you'll experience, and then switch and be Alice. If you hit an uncomfortable moment, be Alice. You're just in Wonderland. Just look down, like my talks, like those books. Oops, I stepped in poop. I'm not staying in this moment. I turn around and I see this thing and it makes me think of this. I'm not getting stuck in that moment. I get to live in a painting. So I'm going to experience the joy of that. I'm going to be in this painting. And by the way, Van Gogh, I've got some questions for you. I'm so grateful and thankful that I'm here, and thank you for answering them. Thank you for healing my soul. See? And go to museums as often as you can. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mia. We've got to go.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, you guys. Have a great life.
All right. Well, thank you for the presentation, Mia. I really think for me especially, that's going to be very helpful for experiencing and enjoying the exhibit next weekend. Just go in as a child and act as if I know nothing about Van Gogh, which isn't that big of a reach for me, but
Well, more than most scholars. From this talk, you got some science, religion, mathematics. We didn't get into the symmetry of his work, but it's exquisite.
Right. So, well, thank you for your presentation, and I'll get everything sent on up so that we can get this reposted, and look forward to another presentation from you later on.
I'll be happy to. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for asking, and just let me know what you need, and I'll be there for the next one.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.